Okay. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Good morning. Am I audible? Am I audible? Okay. So let's directly start today's session. So I welcome all of you to the 8th day of the Unbreakable Challenge. So we have completed art and culture, modern history, and now we are on the second day of silent features of Indian society. So today we'll be dealing with the role of women and women's association. Now this is also a significant part when compared to the society syllabus, as in I have shared previously on the previous day. I have shared the number of questions that came from this syllabus, and you have noticed that more than 10 questions have come from role of women and women's association. So this is a significant part. You need to prepare the one-page note, and also you need to attempt almost all the PYQ questions, because a number of questions have been repeating, as we have seen in the case of Mesolithic architecture, globalization and culture, and some of the modern history questions that we have discussed earlier. Now, before going into the session, let me tell you a few quotes regarding women, which you can actually quote in your introductions and in your conclusions, and even in the case of when ethics question regarding women is asked. So I hope all of you can see. Yeah, good. Different types of quotes should be used when different types of questions come. Okay, so when a question is related to women empowerment in terms of social factors, you can provide another quote. When a question related to education, employment of education opportunities of women is given, you should provide an appropriate quote. It's not that when a question regarding women come, you should provide all types of quotes. Okay, no, it should be related to the sector which is associated. Or let's say when education is asked, an education quote. When society is asked, you should provide such and such quote. As you can see here, when a question related to the overall conditions of the women is asked, you can quote Swami Vivekananda here. And what did he say? There is no chance for the welfare of women in the world unless the conditions of women is improved. Now, this is related to the overall women empowerment, like, or all the overall women empowerment. Also, when an overall women empowerment question is asked, you can also quote Jawaharlal Nehru. Then what did he say? He said that it is the women, and this is something that we use usually. Okay, when you see the toppers answers, you can always see that he or she have quoted Jawaharlal Nehru, and this is the exact quote. It is the women who must be awakened. Once she's on the move, the family moves, the village moves, and the nation moves. I guess this was also a question which was asked in UPSC essay paper. Also, you can quote Nehru once again. You can tell the condition of a nation by looking at the status of the women. This is also related to women empowerment. Women empowerment. Also, when a question regarding the education of women is asked, okay, especially in case of social justice question or even in case of society question, you can quote Jyotiba Phule. What did he say? Educate a man and you educate an individual. Educate a woman and you educate a family. There is another quote, I guess, said by Michelle Obama: when you educate a man, you educate a man. When you educate a woman, you educate a nation. I guess not by Michelle Obama, by some other person. Almost the similar quote has been said by Jyotiba Phule as well. So I won't be going through all the quotes. As you can see here, you can pause the video and note it down, or you can just type in ChatGPT or any other quote-based websites. But then let me tell you, when a women empowerment question is asked, try to quote Jawaharlal Nehru. When an education-based question is asked, try to quote Jyotiba Phule. And when a social empowerment question is asked, you can quote Rajaram Mohan Rai, as he said, a society that does not respect women will never become truly great. Okay, so when a social justice or when a society-based question is asked, you can quote Rajaram Mohan Rai here. So these are the quotes. And also when a women-based question is asked, try to quote the general data and facts. Okay, you need to know about the education literacy of women. You need to know about the female infanticide percentage. You need to have information regarding the National Family Health Survey and the birth rate, illiteracy, education, sex ratio, all these data you need to know, okay? Be it digital divide. So you need to have a lot of data to answer the society-based questions as well. So let us go directly into the questions. So as always, I have 5 questions for you. But then the difference here is that we have not been writing 15 marker based questions, right? So here I have included two 15 mark questions. As you can see here, the first two questions here, the first two questions are of 15 marks, and then you have 3 10-marker questions. So you can pause the video and you can attempt these questions. So these are the 5 questions that we are going to discuss today. Okay. Also, who want to know how to answer this question, what to include in the introduction, body part, and conclusion, you can continue watching the video. So we'll dive directly into the first question. Now, what does the first question ask you? The first question basically says, what are the continued challenges for women in India against time and space? Since this is a 15 marker question, you need to write 3 pages, right? So what are the continued challenges? The challenges should be continuing. You cannot say that sati is there, widow remarriage is not there. You can't say all these things. You have to only say about those things which are continuing in India. So what are the continued challenges women in India face against time and space? Now, you can just generally mention all the challenges that women face here. You need to be very specific, right? And you need to be very specific on 2 matters. What are the matters set by UPSC here? You need to mention what are the challenges faced by women in case of time and in case of space. Now, how do you elaborate on the time? Now, time can be different aspects, right? Time can be when a female child is born, when she becomes a child, when she is on a teenage, when she is married, when she is working, and when she is old. Now, these can be different aspects related to time. Now, when a child is born, she is faced with several challenges, right? Or even before the child is born, there can be female infanticide, there can be female feticide. Also, you can quote the sex ratio, which is very poor in case of Punjab, Haryana, and all the places. And when she is a child, you can mention the nutrition, you can mention the education, you can mention different aspects. And when she is a teen, you can mention anemia, you can mention nutrition, you can mention about the education qualifications or the educational illiteracy, you can mention about the menstrual problems, and you can mention about the crimes that she faces. And what if she becomes a married woman? You can mention about the dowry related issues, you can mention about the social issues that she faces, you can mention all these factors. Now, when she's old age, also you can mention there's no specific women related issue in the old age. Old age issue is related to almost everyone. But in case of a married woman or even a child, you can mention different aspects, okay? So socially, you can mention, politically, you can mention, economically, you can mention, because you can mention the feminization of agriculture. You can mention she don't have right to property. You can mention that there is gender pay gap. You can mention, so try to politically, we have only 14% of parliamentarians being women. So try to mention before birth, during birth, then you can mention teenage, child, married women, general women, and also when she's old age. Now, since that is how we mention time, or we write about time. Now, what about space? What is meant by space? Here, I'm at the Civilsdaily studio. This is a space, right? So a space can be in her household, in her personal space, in her workspace, in her society, So you can quote such issues, okay? So let's say in her household, what are the issues that she faces? You can mention about dowry, you can mention about marital rape, you can mention about the lack of respect, you can mention the gender pay gap, you can mention lack of anything, you can mention all these issues. Now it comes to workspace, you can mention lack of managerial roles, you can mention the gender pay gap, you can mention all the different factors. Now, what about society? You can mention the crimes, you can mention rapes, you can mention all these factors. Now, this is the way you should write the answer. You cannot just write what are the challenges faced by women. Rather, the question asks you to write about again space and time. So, time relates from birth to death, and space relates to household, workspace, society, and all the other factors. Now, this is the way you should write your answer. Now, what about the second one? Second question. And also, the question asks you about the challenges, right? So definitely when the question asks you about the challenges, what should you write? We should also mention the way forward on how we can improve the conditions of women, both in case of time and both in case of space. Now, you need not provide two separate body parts regarding the same. Rather, you can provide how to empower women socially, politically, economically, and all the other aspects. So always when the challenges is asked, you need to write the way forward, as in how to empower women. This is a very basic thing. All of you should write the same. Now, the second question. The women's movement in India has not addressed the issues of lower strata, social strata. Substantiate view. Again, it's a 50-marker question, so you need to write 3 pages. So what does the question say? The women's movement in India has not addressed the issues of social strata. Substantiate your view. Now, what does substantiating by view mean? Also, it's a 15-marker. So should you address only the first part of the question saying that the women movement in India has not addressed the social points, has not addressed the social strata, and just substantiate my view, they add like 6 to 7 points regarding the same? No. You need to provide the other aspect as well, wherein you also provide the women movement in India has at times spoke about the social strata, at times addressed the issues of social strata as well. Okay, so the first body part would be wherein you substantiate the statement which is given, how the women movement has not addressed this lower social strata. And what does substantiating mean? Substantiating basically means that you need to provide examples regarding the same. So how do you substantiate that the issues of women of lower strata has not been addressed? You can say that the women movements in India has been urbanized. You can say that it has been urbanized. You can say that, and now you can go for a stakeholder approach. Now, what does a stakeholder approach mean? Women can be divided into different categories, right? You can mention about caste-based women. The caste-based issues of women has not been addressed. The rural-based issues faced by women has not been addressed, such as literacy, such as getting water, such as their nutrition. This has not been addressed. Caste-based issues, such as honor killings, such as all the different factors that faced by women when she marry a person of lower caste or when she marry a person of highest caste, has not been addressed. Religion, you can write about Muslim women. You know all the issues faced by Muslim women, be the parda system, be the lack of property that they have, the lack of empowerment, all these issues you can address. You can mention about the tribal women. You can mention about the rural women. So this manner, you try to address the women in India has not addressed the issue of lower strata, meaning the lower strata women may for say that mostly the women has been focused on urbanized people. Caste-based issues of the women has not been addressed. Rural issues faced by women such as lack of food, lack of water, lack of sanitation has not been addressed. women and caste-based issues, women and tribal issues, women of particular religions such as Islam, and also rural-based issues have not been addressed. Now, what do you say? We provide information regarding, no, it is not the same, even though you need to provide a transition here. Because why do you provide a transition here? Because the question doesn't explicitly ask you to mention about the opposite part of the question. Okay, so when you go on writing the body part, what should you say? You need to provide a transition saying that even though the women's movement in India mostly focused on the urban elites or the urban areas, there are certain issues which have been addressed related to the women of social strata as well. Now, how do you address the same? Or what are the events? You can mention about the environmental movements, such as Chipko movement. You can mention about the Chipko movement. You can mention about alcohol movements, anti-alcohol movements, such as the anti-Arak movement in Andhra Pradesh. You can mention about there are several caste-based movements. You can mention about the abolition of sati. Do know that the sati was abolished only in British India, okay? It was not abolished in the princely states. When it was abolished in 1829, abolition basically took place in India in 1888. Abolition of Sati Act, Prevention of Sati Act, I guess something like that. You mentioned about certain religions, such as recently there was a Shabarimala movement in Kerala, right? So it focused on the women of lower strata. Also, you try to provide examples to substantiate that no, the social movements, the women movements have also focused on the issue of lower strata. And try to provide a conclusion as well relating to a social example relating to, as I said, Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ambedkar, or someone you can quote the same. Now, third question, the directive is examine the role of gig economy in the process of empowerment of women. Now, this is a 10-marker question. Now, it's very easy to find out the introduction here. You can mention about the gig economy. You can provide the fact regarding the same and try to link it with women. The first body part would be the role of gig economy. The role of gig economy in the empowerment of women. The role of gig economy in the empowerment of women would be the first body part because it is directly given in the question. But then, since the question asks you to examine, what should you write in the second body part? We should say that even though it leads to empowerment of women, there are several challenges regarding gig economy in terms of women. You need to mention the challenges such as gender gap, gender pay gap, no social benefits. You need to mention at least 3 to 4 points regarding the same. Now here, what should be your weightage to be given? 6 points can be given. 60% of the portion you can write about how the gig economy leads to the empowerment of women, and 40% can be given to, or 4 points can be written in case of the other body part as well. So try to follow a 60-40 approach here. Now, the fourth question. The women's question arose in modern India as part of the 19th century social reforms. Now, what are the major issues and debates concerning women in that period? What are the major issues? What are the major issues and debates concerning women in that period? Now, how do you introduce the question? The women's question arose in modern India as part of the 19th century social reforms. Now, since this question is a 10-marker, you have all the points to write the 10-marker here, right? You can mention about what were the major issues faced by women concerning in that period. First of all, you can mention about sati. Sati was one of the issues. And what was the issue? Issue is basically sati. And then what is the debate concerning the same? The debate was that women were thrown into fire because of her husband died. And you can also mention After the efforts of Rajaram Mohan Roy, it led to the Prevention of Sati Act, Sati Abolition Regulation Act of 1829. Now, secondly, what was the issue faced by women? You can mention about the issue of widow remarriage. What was the issue? Women were not allowed to remarry, and should they live the rest of their lives in a very bad phase? What did it do, or how was it resolved? You can mention about the Widow Remarriage Act after the efforts of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. So this is how you should write this body part. Okay. So firstly, try to introduce the question, mentioning the time period and mentioning the early reformers such as Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Now mention about the issue, mention what was the issue, and also how was it resolved. Okay. This is the way, since it doesn't have a separate body part. Okay. Since the question is only 10 marks, you can write around 8 to 10 points regarding the same. Okay. Try to focus on Sati, widow remarriage. All the issues are there, right? Female literacy was not there, education was not there, caste-based discrimination was there, religion-based discrimination was there, economy-related issue was not what there, women were not into public sphere. So you can write all these points here. And what about the last question? Empowering women is the key to control population growth. Now here, introduce by saying that, or you can introduce by saying that India is basically the largest populous country in the world. Okay, previously it was China, but then all of you know, India have overtaken China. And then try to mention the education of women or empowerment of women in the introduction itself. You can say that recently India has overcome China to become the first populous country or the largest populous country in the world. Certain economists or certain people, or else you can say that empowerment of women is touted as one of the solution to control this massive population growth. Try to bring in the empowerment of women in the introduction itself. Well, now what will be your first body part? The first body part would be how empowerment of women leads to population control. Leads to population control. Now you can mention all these factors, such as socially, how would empowerment leads to population reduction, such as empowering women socially, how does it lead to? You can mention she'll have a say in the family matters, she'll have a say in the maternity matters, she'll have the right to her own body, right? Now economically, when a woman is working, she wouldn't be having she would not be having 3 to 4 kids because she wants to work. Then you can write about education, how education leads to low population growth. And when you write all these points, trying to substantiate the same, okay? You can mention about the examples of Kerala, you can mention about the examples of working women, working professional women, you can quote about the National Family Health Survey Fair, and you can quote all these research papers, all these things to substantiate your answer. But then here the body part is discussed, right? Now how do you address this one? Empowering women is the key to control population growth. Now discuss. What can you write? You cannot say that the empowering of women doesn't lead to population growth, right? That's an absurd statement. Now what can you provide here? Maybe you can provide how to empower women. Okay, you can provide another body part saying how to empower women, or else you can mention the challenges faced in empowering women. Okay, so first body part would be how women empowerment leads to population growth, and the second body part you can mention the challenges faced in the empowerment of women, or you can mention how to empower the women. Okay, now these are the 5 questions. I have already said the 5 introduction, body part, and conclusion that you need to write. Now all of you can start writing. I'm going to be discussing about the model answers. Now let me tell you, even in the case of model answer, my handwriting is actually very bad. So several of the students have said me to change the handwriting, which is not possible. Now what I did is that I took I downloaded a topos copy from the internet, which I'm going to show you. But then let me tell you, the topos copy which I'm going to show is not the greatest, okay? Almost in all the questions, he or she have written very less points. The introductions, the conclusions are of very poor standard. So I'm going to show you as only an answer. It's not a model answer or something, but then for your reference, I'm just showing you here. I have also added some of the other points that you need to write here. Okay. Now the first question. What are the continued challenges faced by women against time and space? Now what has the topper written here? Women condition in India, though it has improved in the past century, but low female labor participation rate, low women political representation, 14%, with high crimes against women and low social condition shows that it needs to be done for women in India. A lot need to be done for women in India. Now, this is not the right way to introduce, because here he or she has given all the data, everything here, which can be provided in the body part. So you don't need to provide a lot of data here. You could just generally mention, the women in India continues to face several challenges. You can provide a general introduction here. Okay, you don't need to provide all the facts regarding all the things here, or just you can try to quote a recently contemporary example regarding the same. Okay, you just need to quote a single example. You don't need to provide a lot of data which he or she have given here. Now the next one would be mention the time, as in you can see here, before consumption, then in the womb, female feticide, infants, infanticide, then child, malnutrition, school dropout, child labor, adolescent, anemia, child marriage, sexual violence, adult women, rape, trafficking, unpaid work, domestic work, and also old age women such as exclusion, neglect, widow, all these issues that they have faced. Nextly, challenges faced by women against the time. It's almost the same thing, okay? You need to basically elaborate that thing. You don't need to provide a body part here. So patriarchal mindset, discrimination from cradle to grave, abuse, crimes, when as a source of cultural reproduction, this is not needed. You could just mention when as a child, when as a baby, during the womb, old age, and you can provide all the same. Now challenges faced by women against space. Now space can be, as I said, household, in her house, workspace, society, and everything. So here, he or she given sexual harassment at workplace, Vishaga guidelines, glass ceiling, women in station being paid less than men, low female labor force participation. You can mention all this in the workspace, okay? Feminization of agriculture can be written in workspace or even the household. Now, way forward also needs to be elaborated, okay? It shouldn't be provided like this, as in when a challenges question is asked and also it's a 50 marker, you need to elaborate your way forward. So you need to provide more points regarding the same. You need to provide at least 5 to 6 points regarding way forward as well, because the challenges are explicitly asked. So way forward should be answered elaborately because it's a 15 marker question. Now how can you conclude? Here he or she have quoted, I guess, Jawaharlal Nehru. So Jawaharlal Nehru once said, to awaken India, it is the women who must be awakened. Once she is on the move, the family moves, and the village moves, and the nation moves. So you can provide such a quote which has been provided here. You can quote Jyotibai Phule, Gandhi, Nehru, even Ambedkar said the same regarding the women. By looking at the women, by looking on the condition of women, you can judge how a nation can perform. You can quote the Ambedkar here as well. Also, you can quote the SDG goals, okay? You can quote the Sustainable Development Goal 4, which basically leads with gender equality. You can also quote SDG Goal 4, which deals with gender equality. Okay? Or you can also quote the Government of India quote, which is Nari Shakti. Nari Shakti, which usually Prime Minister quotes. You can mention Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, not here in an education based question. You can mention all these quotes related to women out there. Okay. Now, second question. The women's movement in India has not addressed the issues of women in lower strata. Substantiate your view. Here, he or she have given the women's movement in India started by some prominent men like Rajaram Mohan Roy, Isha Chandra Vidyasagar, and it gained momentum in the 1970s and the 1980s. Here, they have only focused on the social reforms. You can provide any other different introductions. You can maybe provide a very general introductions as well. Okay, it doesn't need to mention Rajaram Mohan Roy or even Isha Chandra Vidyasagar. Now, first body part, women's movement in India has not addressed the issue of women. First one being, you can say about the movement being considered urbanism. The movement mostly focused on westernization. Second one can be the social abuse of women with reference to the lower caste has not been addressed, such as the Hathras rape case of a Dalit girl, which has not been addressed. You can mention about the rapes. You can mention about the naked parades as in Manipur and all the other areas. Unequal access to land and resources, women working in unorganized sector, limited economic conditions such as feminization of agriculture and the lack of all these things. You can also mention about the language barrier that they face. But then you need to also mention, however, the women has pioneered and strengthened by the women of lower strata. You can mention about the anti-liquor movement. You can mention about the environmental movement such as Shipko movement, Narmada Bachao Andolan, and you can also mention some of the other movements such as women has been indulging in caste-based movements, women has been indulging in religious movements such as Sabarimala movement and all the other different movements out there. So try to provide at least 4 to 5 points to substantiate this body part as well. Okay. So in the first body part, what can you mention? You can mention about the dominance of upper caste, urban feminism, neglect of caste-based discrimination, limited focus on rural women's struggles such as education, water, nutrition, tribal indigenous movement, Muslim women issues. Also on the second body part, you can mention anti-liquor, environment and forest, land and labor movements, anti-caste and Dalit women movements, caste and religious-based movements. You can provide all these examples and also try to substantiate by moving on to a social angle. Okay, you can maybe quote Rajaram Mohan Roy or any other person who was mostly involved in social angle of women. Now, third question, examine the role of gig economy in the process of empowerment in India. Now, you can mention the definition of gig here because gig is not a usual term which we use it on a daily basis. So, there's no issue in mentioning the definition of gig here. And also, when you provide here, now what is the issue of this introduction? A gig economy is a labor market that relies on the temporary and part-time positions filled by independent contractors and fixed freelancers with a full-time permanent employee. Now, what is the issue here? The issue is basically that he or she have not addressed the issue of women. This is mostly a very general introduction which speaks about gig economy only. But then the question is basically on the role of gig economy in the empowerment of women. Also, so what do you need to do? You also need to mention about women. Somewhere in the introduction, you need to mention about women. Okay. Now, next one. The goal of gig economy in women's empowerment. You can mention the social points and then you can mention the economic points as well. Now, here he or she have written the political point. Political class would be more serious towards demand of women. That all is not required. You don't need to follow the pestle approach because the political points is irrelevant in case of gig economy question. But then you can mention about the social point and also you can mention about the economic points. Now, since the question is examine, what do you need to provide? You need to provide the negative aspects or the challenges in gig economy as well, such as no social security, jobs are temporary in nature, which leads to exploitation, discrimination against women on the basis of gender, pay, unregulated nature, restricted growth. So you need to mention all these points regarding the same. Now, goal of gig economy, you can mention about the flexible work options, which helps her to take about the domestic needs, such as taking care of children and also working. You can mention about the low entry barriers because usually after pregnancy and after childbirth, there is a lot of gap in the women's career. But in case of gig economy, there is very low entry barriers. Even those who have studied till 10, 12, even all the others can actually enter into different jobs. You have the economic independence, digital and skill empowerment because gig economy is mostly related to apps or even internet. So they'll get access to digital and skill empowerment. Wider geographical areas, such as mostly even in the tier 1 and tier 2 cities, people are moving to different gig economy jobs. So even in the rural areas as well, increased social mobility includes of marginalized groups, such as even the Dalits and tribals also can also enter into gig economy jobs. But then what are the challenges? You can mention about the lack of social security. There is no maternity benefits. Safety concerns are definitely there in case of women riders, as we see in Zomato, Zepto, and all the others. Digital divide, because only 29% of Indian women have internet facilities or even access to internet. Sorry, in India, only 29% have access to internet connectivity. When you take the whole, in case of women and men, only 29% of the women among the total population has access to internet as well. There is gender pay gaps and also income stability. And also when you conclude, you have mentioned about the challenges here, right? Now, after challenges, when you write the way forward, you need to actually provide a way forward. As in, you need to provide, the government needs to regulate or the government needs to introduce several social security benefits, especially for women, in order to make them really empowered or to achieve the goal of Nari Shakti. Something that actually avoids the challenges which you have recently mentioned. Something that is more empowering. Okay, since the upper body part is related to challenges, you need to provide how to solve these challenges. Especially mention the government. Okay, government related something you can provide. Now on the fourth question, the women's question arose in the modern history as part of 19th century social reform movement. What are the major issues and debates concerning the same? Now you can mention the various writers and foreign travelers have explained the deplorable condition of the women before 18th century. It was Rajaram Mohan Roy who took the lead in the women's reform movements and worked for them. Now what are the major reforms, major issues? You can mention about the relevance of Sati. Now what is Sati? Relevance of Sati. What was the issue? Mention Sati and also mention the social reformer, and also it finally led to the Sati Regulation Act of 1829. Second one can be the issue of widow remarriage, deplorable treatment of women, which led to Widow Remarriage Act, the Parda system, low literacy level, early child marriage, polygamy, female infanticide. So you can mention abolition of sati, widow remarriage, child marriage, lack of female education, Parda and seclusion, polygamy, participation, very low participation in the public sphere, Devadasi system, lack of inheritance and property. You can mention all these issues, okay? You don't need to mention any other body part here because it's a 10-marker question. You cannot provide contemporary on how to empower women, right? Because that situation basically happened in the 19th century and there is no relevance in us providing current contemporary on how to empower women in the modern history question. Now the fifth question, empowering women is the key to control population growth. Discuss. So mention about India's population growth. Now this was a 2021 question, so the topper has basically written 2019 question. So basically the topper has written India is expected to surpass China as the most populous country in 2023. So India has basically surpassed China, so we cannot provide this. And also mention empowering women can be one of the solution to this. Okay, try to mention in such manner. Now how empowerment of women leads to population growth? Women education, then have access to smaller families. Economic empowerment leads to lesser children. Socially empowered becomes an agency of their own reproductive rights. Better use of contraceptives when they are educated. Discarding the Sanmeta preferences when they are educated. So you need to provide all these examples, okay? The social empowerment, even political empowerment you can mention. When the women are politically empowered, they becomes access to all the information. They'll get more representatives in parliament, which will then come up with women-friendly bills. So you can mention social points, social empowerment, political empowerment, and also economic empowerment of the same. Also, as in the case of second body part, you can mention how to empower women, or also you can mention the challenges faced in the empowerment of women, and also try to provide the conclusion regarding the goal, or even by quoting the word Nari Shakti, or even by quoting any of the freedom fighters out there. Okay, so education, economic, which then leads to delayed marriage and motherhood, healthcare and contraception, shifting family norms, which can be mentioned as a social point as well. So okay everyone, I hope you understood all the questions and what is there to write in each of the body parts. So do share your answers before 4 p.m. And those who are not yet part of the Unbreakable Challenge, now is the right time to join the challenge, because we are going to be completing GS1. After society, we only have geography, and we are going to be starting GS2 after that. So thank you everyone once again. Thank you all of you joining, and I hope you enjoy the session. See you tomorrow with the issue of population and poverty and development issues, and also population and associated issues. Thank you.